Hey guys, this is Pastor Anthony here with Daily Excellence, and believe it or not, I got my good friend here in the flesh sitting next to me, Greg from NyPrepper Channel with us. We just got done hanging out and having some dinner. He's here in Michigan, so he just called me up and said, "Hey, I'm going to be in Michigan. How far do you live from here?" I'm like, "Oh, I just work right around the corner." So we got together.
Yeah, I can't believe it just worked out that you're like where you work right near where I was going.
Yeah, so we just got together and hung out and decided we'll just we'll shoot a quick little video and you know, do what we're going to do, I guess. So, but hey, I got a question for you. And so, you know, I guess you've been I know you have been. We've been following this whole stock market thing and the tariffs and all this craziness. And even today, Trump came out and said that he's going to jack the tariffs up and China to 104%. Yeah. So, you know, obviously yesterday we were kind of expecting the worst, but it didn't happen. Thank God. The stocks are still down today. So, you know, with that kind of weirdness, you know, just your own personal opinion, you know, we don't have to be politically correct or anything.
Right.
What's your thought on this? You know, how do you see this playing out?
Yeah, well, I think what Trump is trying to do is he's trying to use the tariffs to, number one, make a statement to the world, you know, that America's back and you guys owe us, and also I think he wants to pay off our debt with these tariffs. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's what I think it is, because I think raising taxes would not be popular with the American people. No. So he thought, okay, we'll raise tariffs. So I think that's what he's trying to do. But as far as the market goes, you know, as long as these tariffs are in place, I can't see that long term the market's going to start going back up suddenly. I mean, you know, all these companies that have factories overseas and stuff, they're not going to be able to suddenly spin up factories in 2 days. You know, it takes months and months. So so I think the fundamentals even before the tariffs, the stock market was overvalued and the fundamentals were never that great, and we're overdue for a recession. It's part of the natural economic cycle. You know, recessions are part of the cycle. So
it's part of correction.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So it's inevitable, whether it's from tariffs or some other reason, it's coming. So, you know, we just have to be prepared and stuff.
Yeah, that was kind of the point I had made over on X. I don't know, it wasn't on X. It was one of the videos I did over the weekend. But, you know, our stock market here in the U.S. was like super inflated. Hyperinflation really in the markets, and so we really haven't seen our real numbers in the stores. We haven't seen our real numbers in the stock markets or anything like that. And I think this was a great testament. You know, when you had nearly $9 trillion just get wiped out in 3 days, kind of shows you where our money's really at, and what's really not there. Right. So you know, there's that. Of course, China says they're not going to back down. So do you think that you know, we'll win in this, or China will win? Because everybody else is kind of coming to the table, but not China.
I think China knows that they have leverage over us, and they're going to see how far they can push us until we crack. And you know, China's in a position where they can stand toe to toe with us economically for sure.
Well, they own most of our debt too.
Right, exactly. So, you know, it could go really bad for us, to be honest, because, you know, we're just not in a position to go to a trade war with China, you know. Right. I don't think we are. I mean, not right now after 4 years of Biden, and then before that, 8 years of Obama. You know, the economy is just not in a good position to do a trade war with China. That's something you need a really vibrant, strong economy to go up against China like that, and we're just not in that position now. But you know, maybe they'll meet in the middle and they'll compromise or something. You know, this is just the initial stages, right? So at some point, I'm sure that hopefully they'll ease it, you know, and they'll somehow come to the negotiating table eventually, I would imagine. But if not, then this could cause the worst economic recession in years,
and supply shocks too.
Supply shocks, right? Yeah. I have a friend of mine who's a mechanic for foreign cars, like Audis, Volkswagens.
Yeah,
and he just recently placed a huge order because what a lot of people don't realize is with these tariffs, a lot of the countries overseas that are exporting, they're doing a supply hold on everything until they figure out how to adjust their prices. So there's actually a freeze right now. Like I think Volkswagen and some of the other European car companies, they have a freeze on supplies. So if you need, a timing belt or an oil filter or something for your Volkswagen, they're not selling it. There's a freeze because they want to figure out where to adjust the prices. So that's really bad if you own like a import. Yeah, right, and that could have huge ramifications for all different kinds of businesses.
Yeah, especially a lot of machinery that we have here in the U.S. runs on semiconductors. A lot of that stuff comes from China. A lot of our, electrical and chips and things like that come from China. Although the United States did start making some moves and making some of those things here, we're just not there to support ourselves yet. So that definitely will play a part, should there be like some kind of an embargo, which we've already seen that. I think China announced today an embargo from some U.S. items being used in the area of farming. That went into place or is going into place. I don't know if it's tomorrow when the new tariffs go into effect or whatever, but so you got that aspect of things going on in the world. Of course, then we were talking about, a little bit while we were eating about Iran and what's going on there, and trying to kind of talking about, what we think is going to happen. You were telling me that, that Benjamin Netanyahu kind of got surprised in the Oval Office when Trump announced that there was going to be some direct talks this Saturday, with Iran, and Israel wasn't too thrilled about that. So kind of explain to everybody, what you were telling me, what your thought process on that was.
Yeah, well, various Israeli sources basically confirmed that Trump didn't tell Netanyahu about the talks this Saturday in Oman, didn't tell Netanyahu about it. So basically Trump went behind Netanyahu's back and behind Israel's back, and they're going to be negotiating now, or like you said, could be just like a final ultimatum, final chance, final olive branch before they strike. But the Israelis were very, very upset that Trump didn't tell them that they were going to do this. And there's actually a lot of videos out that are like kind of cropped, so you can see Netanyahu's face when Trump announced that in the Oval Office that they were going to do the talks. And Netanyahu looked real annoyed. He obviously maintained his composure, but it could go either way. But like you were saying, Iran probably already has nukes.
Yeah.
With their close cooperation with Russia, I mean, it's just hard to believe that they wouldn't have any. They wouldn't get one from Russia, or by now have developed their own. So
just like and here's the thing, and this is what we're talking about. How many times have we heard, oh, Iran is 5 years away from having a nuke, or they're 90 days away from having a nuke. Oh, now they're 2 years away from having a nuke. Oh, now they're 60 days away from having a nuke. Like the time goes back and forth. It just, when you have such a randomness in a time frame like that, it basically tells you they already have it.
Yep.
And Russia is our competitor in the nuke space because the United States owns the most nukes out of any country in the planet, and Russia is a close second.
Yep.
Right behind us. And so you can't tell me that, Iran didn't get a nuclear weapon for Christmas.
Right. Exactly.
I'm just saying, it didn't come in their Christmas card.
Right.
So,
right.
I think they got them for sure.
Yeah. And the question is how many, and
right.
And then another thing aside from just the nukes is the quality of the missiles too, because you can have a nuke, but the missile is also a big portion of it because it has to be accurate. It has to be, you have to be able to launch it quickly. And so there's a lot of technical stuff that goes into it. It's not just the bomb itself, but the delivery system And Iran's delivery systems have gotten better, but they're still not on par with Israel or European or American deliveries, or even Russian. As we saw in Operation True Promise, you know, the first strike on Israel, you know, a lot of those missiles like landed in the middle of the desert.
Right.
They were just way off, like miles off from their targets. So, but if you have a nuclear warhead, you know, what they used to do back in the Cold War days before they really had the guidance down real good, and you know, like nowadays the missile accuracy is amazing, but back in the day, you know, 50s, 60s, 70s, they would just make the bombs much larger to accommodate for less accuracy. So even if you miss your target by a mile, you have such a gigantic warhead, it doesn't matter.
Right.
So they could compensate for that by just making larger ones. But their delivery systems, they have a lot of them. They're, you know, they have hundreds and hundreds of you know, transporter erector launchers, you know, trucks with missiles, you know, that they put the missile in the truck and they can drive it anywhere, park it, and launch it. They have they have their IRBMs, intermediate range ballistic missiles. They have them inside of semis. So like, you know, an 18-wheeler, the missile is in the trailer, and it opens up and they can park it anywhere. The missile, you know, lifts up in the air and they launch it. They have the same thing with shipping containers. They call that the Club K. I'm sure you're probably familiar with it, but they've successfully tested that, and those have like 1,000-mile range, some of them. So the big concern with that, with these recent threats from Iran, like 2 weeks ago, they said that they could target us in the Gulf of America. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
So, you know, one of the ways they could do that is they would have a container ship, and they would put like, you know, 100 or 200 of those containers on a container ship, and they would have ballistic missiles, and we wouldn't know that it's a missile container ship. You know, it would just look like a normal container ship. And they could just, you know, stop it somewhere in a convenient spot in the Gulf of America and hit our critical bases, you know, like Tyndall or MacDill. They could hit so many different targets. There's a lot of even Barksdale, where the B-52s are at. That's not too far from the Gulf, in Shreveport, all within range of these, you know, missiles. And we don't have any air defenses along our coastline. You know, like in the Cold War, we had various types of air defense missiles for shooting down bombers, fighter jets, and enemy missiles as well. We had the Nike missiles and things like that. We don't have that anymore, so our coastlines are wide open.
Yeah.
There's no Patriot batteries like you know, Ukraine or Israel with the Iron Dome. They have, you know, Patriot batteries all around their country. We don't have anything like that, so we're wide open, you know.
Right. That's one of the reasons why Trump's trying to build a kind of like our own missile defense Iron Dome system here in the U.S., because he realizes that we are vulnerable in those places. And when you talk about the quality of weaponry that Iran has, you have to remember too, not only are they getting gifts, you know, potentially from Russia, which should probably, in my personal opinion, would be the main country they would get gifts from.
Right.
But China, you know, is right there with them. China's an ally of Russia and of Iran. Matter of fact, there's been meetings between the three of those countries on and off this over the weekend, especially with this tariff stuff going on. And so we don't know, you know, maybe, you know, China's not supplying some technology. We know that China's very strong in their you know, water navy, you know, ships and things like that. Definitely a competitor with us here in the U.S., and you know, they could be you know, maybe sharing a little tech with the Iranians as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, China has a lot of different missiles. They could give them rocket boosters. They can help them with their guidance, their you know, their satellite GPS guidance systems. You know, they have a lot of circuit boards and things like that. So yeah, definitely. And speaking of China, there was just recently, I think it was this morning, that the Ukraine confirmed that there were Chinese troops, that they captured Chinese troops on the front lines. They were fighting for Russia. That was a big breaking story today. So,
and you know, that kind of fits the World War III synopsis, because we know that France and you know, the UK are sending in troops to fight on behalf of the Ukraine side.
Supposedly they're just going to be stationed at strategic locations, according to France and Britain. They're basically going to put them in cities, power plants. Whether that's true or not, we don't know, but it seems like China's now involved because the UK and France are getting involved. So, I mean, that's kind of, you know, the escalation point there. And then, you know, of course, if something was to happen and, you know, you get shots fired by France or the UK going into hitting a Russian or Chinese soldier. Sure. Well, now you just enacted Article 25 of the NATO of NATO. I know, and now everybody's got to get involved. Yeah. So far, we haven't bailed out of NATO, but I think it's coming. Well, I just heard today that Trump wants to withdraw 10,000 troops from Eastern Europe. I don't know if that's part of a potential deal with Putin to help, you know, get the deal going. You know, maybe like offering some kind of a sacrifice to Putin. You know, but. Yeah, and aside from, you know, all these countries getting involved, another important thing to keep in mind, too, is that Ukraine is a testing ground for American weapons, for Russian weapons, Chinese, that's why all these countries are sending weapons to Ukraine, whether it's the NATO countries or America or whether it's the BRICS countries. They're all doing it, and they want to test their weapons. They want to see. It's like a real world. It's a real war. So that's why, you know, North Korea is sending their artillery and China is probably sending their troops, I would imagine, because they're getting ready to invade Taiwan and they want their troops to not be green. They want their troops to be battle hardened. And so they're sending them there to learn also how America and American weapons work. Because, you know, we have Ukraine is like 70% of their weapons now are American and NATO. You know, they use very little Russian weapons now. They're basically like a NATO country. So, you know, if you're China, you can learn a lot about, you know, our weapons and if they're going to invade Taiwan, they obviously want to know that. So, it's a big testing ground. You know, what I find fascinating about Ukraine is it's a country that NATO's fighting for, but they don't want it. Right. Like they don't want Ukraine, but we're fighting for Ukraine. Well, what it is it's just a buffer zone. Yeah. Ukraine is a buffer zone, and even the Eastern European NATO members, the former Warsaw Pact countries that were in the Eastern Bloc, Poland, the Baltic, every country east of Germany, NATO considers them basically buffer countries. You know, that's why they don't put forces there. There's not any big NATO bases in Poland. I mean, now there's mostly American bases in Poland, but there's not French or German or British bases in Poland or the Baltics. They have very small contingents, you know, 1,000 or 2,000 troops that they're mostly as a tripwire deterrent, you know, but if push comes to shove, you know, do you really think France and the UK and even us here we're not going to send hundreds of thousands of troops to defend Estonia, right? You know, that they're basically a buffer zone. So the Baltics, Poland, Romania, the Balkan countries as well. You know, they're all just. I mean, from if you're a Western European or the original founding members of NATO, that's why they accepted those countries, because they needed a buffer from Russia. You know. Yeah. Yeah, it's sad, but it's true. You know, that's the cold, hard reality of war and war planning. You know, so Ukraine's never going to be part of NATO. No, definitely not anytime soon. Yeah, but you know, switching gears for a second, just kind of a little comical. I don't know if it's comical, but it's Elon Musk. So, you know, that guy kind of disappeared. Did you notice? He did put a few things out there on X, I guess, but he's kind of disappeared. Like, where did he go? Where did Elon go? Yeah, from what I've heard is that he's going to be leaving the Trump administration in the coming months. I don't know why that is, but I suspect it has to do with the fact that his companies are not doing too well now. You know, like Tesla stocks are down really bad. And they're blowing up all his dealerships and things like that. I think he probably wants Could be wrong, but my gut feeling is telling me that I think he probably feels like it's more of a hassle or a liability for him to be involved in the Trump administration long term than it is much of a benefit.
Right.
Because really, what has Elon Musk been able to do for himself? I mean, he's done a lot for Trump, and, you know, with Doge and everything, but what has Musk gotten in return for that? Really nothing. And I think Musk wanted to do space stuff for Trump. I don't think he wanted to do Doge. I don't think that's what he wanted to do. I think he was hoping that Trump was going to make him some kind of space advisor and you know, send people to Mars and that. And I think maybe he got disappointed that he's doing Doge, and he doesn't want to do that long term. That's what I think it comes down to. You know, it's not his interest to do that forever. He has all these crazy ideas that he wants to pursue, and I don't think he's going to stick around long term for Doge. But yeah, I mean, I think for him, he sees it as a liability to be associated with Trump long term. That's what I think. And you know, his businesses are failing a little bit now, so I think he wants to go back and fix everything and focus on, you know, what made him famous, you know.
Yeah, he's pretty much got to...
You can't fault him for that, right?
Yeah, he's got to get back and kind of stop the bleeding over at Tesla, I believe, you know?
Right,
so that makes some sense. You
know?
You know, there was kind of a conspiracy theory out there that him and some of the elitists maybe were kind of going in hiding, knowing that, you know, maybe some things that were coming.
That could be too. Yeah, it could be too. Yeah.
So there was that.
Because of Iran, maybe, right?
There was some conspiracy theory going around, but that makes sense too, you know, that you may want to step back and, you know, kind of protect your own assets,
right?
You know, that are on fire, literally. I mean, unfortunately. But,
yeah.
So, well, I know you've got a long drive back to Pennsylvania, so I do appreciate you coming in and just doing this small video with me and hanging out here in Michigan. And so I know you did a video over on your channel kind of showing everybody what you were doing with your truck there.
Yeah.
Climbing the hills and all that stuff. So that's what brought you here.
Yep.
Because you're getting some work done down there. I don't know how far you want to let people know what you're doing, but...
Oh, yeah, I'm just getting a supercharger installed. So I'll be doing some videos with that. You know, there's not a lot of Chevy Silverados that are supercharged.
Yeah.
A lot of people know about the Ford Raptor and the TRX, and so I'll maybe be able to compete with them a little bit, I think, once it's installed. But so yeah, I drove all the way out here for that.
So hey, you might as if you own a GM, you might as well come to the place where GM rules and reigns, and all the parts are here. So,
exactly.
So you're gonna get it done right. So,
yeah, I actually bought that truck right not too far from here in Livonia.
Yeah, I know where that's at. So, but so yeah, he'll be putting those videos out over there, and then of course, you know, he'll be keeping up to date with everything that's going on globally and things like that. And so we'll be working on getting probably doing another collab live with you guys once he gets back in and settles in. And I'm going to be going out of town here in a couple weeks, so you know, once we get past the Holy Week and vacation and all that stuff, we'll be getting back together, and I'm going to have another collab for you guys. I'm sure a whole lot will happen in the next 2 weeks. So it's just the world we live in.
Yeah.
But other than that, appreciate you coming on and hanging out with us today. And
thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And guys, make sure you guys go over, check out New York Prepper, aka Greg. Check out his channel over on YouTube. He's on Patreon as well. And he's on X. So you guys can follow him over on X. All those links will be in our descriptions box below on this video. So that being said, everyone, have a great rest of your day or evening, whatever it is that you're watching this, and we'll see you guys on the next go around. Bye, everyone.